Okay. Okay. No, not this. Sorry. Stop share. Share. I think it was this. Okay. We will begin discussing a pasuk, a verse that we all say every Friday night. We say Sheker Achein veHevel Hayofi Isha Yiras Hashem Isis Halal. Let's make this larger. Thank you. Charm is deceptive, beauty is in vain, a God-fearing woman is one to be praised. Of course, we sing this every single Friday night. This is the conclusion of Mishlei. It's written by the wisest of all men, the wisest of all time. Of course, that is Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. Now, when the Gemara discusses, Masechtas and Hedrin discusses this pasuk, it actually gives an explanation that every word in this pasuk, in this verse, is discussing of a different generation. When it says, Sheker Achein v'Hevel Hayofi, charm is deceptive. Yasi Shalom Aleichem Anishma. What does that mean? You know, we're approaching right now the Yom Tiv, the holiday of Shavuos, during which we mark the giving of the Torah. So what is our commitment to the Torah? More specifically and more particularly, at least what's for us, to our connection, which is studying Torah, not just appreciating it, but spending time with it. You might say, I need to earn a living. It's too late for me to learn Torah. Or you could say, I'm too old. I can't study in depth like I used to do. We see even the Marsha, the greatest of our sages, they said, Bimei Chorfi, in my young years, I was able to learn better. Somebody could say, you know, I'm still getting over the whole pandemic, or there's too many politics going on in the world, or I don't have enough money, I don't have enough serenity to learn, I don't have peace of mind. Or if I study, what's it really worth? So this was the Rebbe is going to discuss and point out for us that the most precious study of Torah of all is the Torah that seems to be in vain. Sheker Hachein. So I'm going to make it a little larger. See if that works. Nope. Sheker Hachein. False charm is deceptive. What is charm? What does it mean, chen? So says the Gemara, Masechta Sanhedrin, Sheker Achein v'Hevel Yofi Isha Yiras Hashem. Says, favor is deceptive. It's false. Zed Dorish Moshe. It's going on the generation of Moses. V'Hevel Yofi Zed Dorish Yeshua, and beauty is in vain. This is generation of Yehoshua. And we're going to soon understand and explain exactly what happened by each generation, why we would say this is a generation of beauty and why it's so deceptive. Isha Yiras Hashem, Davar Acher, another explanation. Sheker Achein, what does it mean? Charm is false. Zed Dairoi Shel Moshe v'Yeshua. That's a generation of Moshe and Yeshua together. Moshe is a generation which received the Torah, left Egypt. Yeshua's generation which entered the Holy Land of Israel. They went from being in the desert where they sat and learned Torah the whole day to owning property, having to farm and to take care of animals and the land, no longer receiving a money, livelihood from Hashem, from heaven, no longer food from heaven, but having to work for it themselves. Hevel Hayofi is this is generation, God-fearing, a beauties and veins, referring to generation of Chizkiyahu, a king from the kings of Beis David, of David HaMelech. who was a great tzaddik, and he says he was the greatest righteous king of all the kings, and had his generation been worthy, he would have been Mashiach. Mashiach would have come in his generation. Yiras Hashem itisalo lesderish Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai. This generation of Yehuda bar Elai. These are the people who are praiseworthy. Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai said he was so poor that during his times, there would be 6 students of Torah learning Torah, and they'd have to cover themselves under one garment because they were so poor. But they learned Torah, and that is what is considered to be a God-fearing woman. Amar love Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai, 6 students who covered themselves in one garment because they were so poor, and they would learn Torah. And it's interesting how one of the I think the first Sfas Emes would say that they would all cover themselves with the same garment, and they would all push it onto the other one. You take more, you take more, you need it more, you need it more. Now, we don't, not to understand, Shlomo HaMelech is the wisest person of all time, the wisest man to ever exist. Torah calls chen, favor, charm. It calls yofi, beauty. Torah refers to beauty and charm as beauty and charm. So why is Shlomo, the wisest of all men, saying at the end of Mishlei, sheker hachein v'hevel hayofi? Charm is deceptive, beauty is in vain. And especially the Gemara, which discusses some of the greatest generations to have ever lived. Generation which left Egypt and received the Torah at Mount Sinai. It's called the Dardeya, generation of understanding, the Sa Hashem. They are greater souls than us. Generation of Chizkiyahu, the king. It says during his time, even a little child in the smallest town knew the most complex halachas of Tuma and Tara, purity and impurity. So why are these generations called, I can understand why they're called the chen, charm, beauty, but why are they called sheker and hevel, nothing, deceptive? And Yehuda bar Elai, he was in a time of tremendous persecution. The Hadrian decrees against the Jewish people killed many tens of thousands of Jews, the greatest sages. The persecutions were immense. And they're learning Torah in great poverty, that 6 Torah students had to use one talis. What one thing is in common for all these generations, the generation of Moshe, who sat and learned Torah the whole day, and they stayed in the desert to learn Torah. Yeshua says, for one night not learning Torah, Hashem punished him. For the generation of Chizkiyahu, the most simple, a young child in a small village in Eretz Yisrael knew the deepest, most complex halachas laws of Torah. Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai, they sat and learned Torah, even though it was with tremendous poverty, difficulty, and persecution. So what does it mean, chen? What does it mean, beauty, charm, favor? And what is Yiras Hashem? What does it mean to learn Torah out of fear of heaven? What are these different types of things? Why would the Torah learning of the generation of Moshe or Yehoshua, why would it be classified as hevel, as falsehood, as nothingness, as deceptive, or as vanity? So to explain this, we're going to bring a sicha from the Rebbe, which we're going to be basing our entire sicha based on this. What is the idea of chen? Chen is charm. It's some people, which they get up in a crowd, everybody will stop and listen to them. What do they have? They have chen. They have a charm. You can say they have a charisma. It's not something that you could quite explain. It's not something you could actually really learn clearly how to do. It's something that's usually innate. And if someone is charming enough, they can convince anyone of anything, most people of anything, that something not good is good, something good is not good. That's the idea of chen. Chen is charm. Is a famous line, chen hamakam hateshvav. People will always find something good in the place that they live. Wherever they live, they can always find something good, and they appreciate it, and they love it. and grandfather was born in the little town of Neville in Russia, and the water in America is never good as the water over there. The bread in America is never good as a bread over there. People always find something good in the place they live, and you see that it's very difficult for people to move. And there's other things that also says a person will have chen. A person will find favor in it. It's not something always rational. Yoifi, beauty, is something that you could explain. You say beauty fits into these and these rules. After the Eliyahu Hanavi, after he didn't die because he went up to heaven alive in a chariot, but after he left this world, and his student, his top student named Elisha, succeeded Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. Elisha succeeded him. And the people of Yericho came to Elisha with a problem. So we used to go to Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah, and now we have an issue. The problem is, about on the page here, the people of the city of Yericho said to Elisha, we love the city where we live, because you see how beautiful it is. However, the water is bad, the land causes people to die. And he tell them, take a brand new clay jug of water, put salt, which usually makes water bitter, put it inside. And then he says he went out to the water, and he says he threw the salt into the water, and he says, I will cure these waters, and will no longer be maves umshakeles. No longer will there be death or bereavement coming out from these waters. And the water became better until this day. And the people of the city said, this city is very good, and the water is bad. Now, if the water in the city was bad and was making people sick, what could be good about the city? But rather, we see that every person has something good and something appealing about the place where they live. It's charming to its residents. And it's sort of a gift that Hashem gives to people in order that people should not feel unhappy the entire time. Similar, it says that Hashem made chen isha al baila. A woman should always find favor in her husband's eyes. Even if nobody else could appreciate it, the husband appreciates it. It doesn't necessarily have to do with physical beauty, and has more to do with the husband just appreciating the greatness of his spouse, of his wife. A similar thing, he says, when someone purchases an item, he's always going to find something good about it. So a person could explain why they think something is pretty, why they think something is nice. Okay, that's yoifi, beauty. Chen is charm. It's an attraction. Attraction is not something you could quite explain. People could live in a city where it's bad water, bad weather, where other things, it could be war going on. People don't want to leave. Why? Because they have a chen, a love for their town. The place is charming to them. Same is true in Torah. You have different aspects, different parts of Torah. You have a part of Torah which is yoifi, beautiful. Beautiful means that a person can understand, can explain why they enjoy this part of Torah. Then you have another part of Torah which is chen, appealing, attraction. I like this part of Torah. And they can't quite put their finger on it. Now, the Tzemach Tzedek had a mesharis, had a attendant who used to help him. Name was Reb Chaim Ber. Now, the mesharsim, the attendants of the Rebbeim, were generally more of the simple people, more those who did their job without asking or probing too much. And there was one of the attendants of the helpers of Tzemach Tzedek. His name was Reb Chaim Ber. He had a set time every day where he learned medrash, simple medrash, or Shulchan Aruch, which he understood. And then he would learn Zohar. He did not understand Zohar, and rather he would read the Zohar every single day to himself. And later on, one time he was asked, what do you enjoy learning more? The Shulchan Aruch or the Zohar? He says, the truth is, I understand what I'm learning in halacha. I don't understand what I'm reading in Shulchan Aruch, but I like the Zohar, which I'm learning much more. And Tzemach Tzedek said that's true, because the Zohar gives excitement to your neshama, and that is greater than the understanding that he gets just from learning the halacha. So there's two types of Torah that you can learn. You can learn Torah because you appreciate it, you enjoy it. This jogs my memory. And there's another type of Torah, which is a greater type of Torah, which is called chen. Chen means I have attraction to it. Something you're attracted to, something you're excited about. Is something that you cannot help but to feel passionate, excited. Person grows up, his favorite singer, Mr. Mordechai Shmuel, is coming to town. He grew up with it. He's going to do everything he could to go see his favorite singer. Something you have a chen, that you're attracted, that you want very much, that you're going to do everything you could to achieve that, and you're going to do it with excitement. That is the idea of chen in Torah. Learning Torah, it's the best type of way of learning Torah, seemingly. If you're doing it and you're excited about it and something that you're passionate about, you'll be successful in. As it says, the Torah was given to the generation which left Egypt and ate the man. Ate the man, the food from heaven, because they were so passionate that they wanted the food from heaven. They wanted more and more of it. They wanted to be connected to Shemayim. It wasn't like, oh, I'm forced every day I have to learn this amount. It was excitement. And they were very successful. They were called the Derdeya, generation of wisdom. That is the way to learn Torah in the way of chen, and that was generation of the Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. It's called chen. They had attraction to Torah. The Gemara says, Sheker achen, charm is deceptive, is going on Moshe Rabbeinu. Because when they're connecting to Torah, they recognize that this is an exciting thing. This is chen b'nei Hashem. Hashem likes us. They were excited about Torah for the sake of Torah. What could you expect from them but to learn Torah? That was their excitement. They weren't interested in which team was winning in the NFL. What their excitement was, Torah, mitzvahs. That was the whole excitement. Dovi, shalom aleichem. So how could it do anything but learn Torah? That's all they wanted to do. So then Moshe Rabbeinu's generation had a very unique connection to Hashem. You could sort of compare it to a newly married couple. They have a very exciting, passionate bond. So the Jewish, and they find each other charming, attractive. And you can say the same thing. When the Jewish people just left Egypt and Mitzrayim, they received the Torah, they were head over heels attracted to Hashem. All they wanted to do, obviously, was to learn Torah and get closer to Hashem by doing his mitzvahs. What happens after the initial excitement dies down? Charm, chen, can fade away. Will they continue to study Torah? What are the long-term ramifications? So let's look at the top of the page over here, if you can see it. We have all the letters of the Alef Beis, Alef, Saf. First letter is Alef, last letter is Saf. The middle letter of the Alef Beis is a Mem. Makes up the word.
Shalom.
What?
Alechem Shalom.
Alechem Shalom.
Does you have a Mem?
Mem, exactly. So it makes up the word Emes. The first letter of the Alef Beis, the last letter of the Alef Beis, the middle letter of the Alef Beis make up the word truth And Chesama, he says, Hashem's seal is truth. Wherever you find that truth, that's where you could find Hashem. He says, Ani Rishon Ani Acharon, Hashem is the beginning and the end. And besides, for me, there's nothing but Hashem. So how do you know something is real by you? How do you know a love is real by you? How do you know that the connection is real by you? It's if you see that it goes from beginning to the end. Not to get, when one gets married, not to be right in the beginning, excited, and after a year or two, when the excitement is not as strong as it was in the beginning, if they're still have the same level of attachment, gets stronger, you know that it's emes, you know that it's real. That's where you know Hashem is there. Hashem is connected to it. So whether you're an Alef, the highest level, when it comes to a Jewish person, you could say it's a person who's doing everything right. Whether it's a Saf, whether we're put in a situation where things are very difficult, or things are very hard, to focus, to concentrate, to have the same excitement as you have in the hard situations, in the tough situations, as you have in the good situations. That's when you know something is real. That's when you know something is connected. In marriage, when a husband and wife, when right after the marriage and everyone's deeply in love and life, or when life is easy, you can't really determine how connected they are. When life becomes difficult and you're still connected, you're still united, that shows how deep the relationship is with each other. In a similar sense, and that's true with Torah. Torah is real only when a Jewish person is committed to it under every single circumstance. Nothing can change it. And this can't be clear, but can't become clear unless there's a generation where they're put to the test, where there are saf. It's not the top generation like Moshe. It's not a mem like Yeshua, or things are intermediate. Rather, a saf, a time of persecution, Hadrian, the decrees, terrible things that the Jewish people went through. And then we have our strong connection to Torah. Then you know that it's a real thing. So sheker hachein, you could say the passion, the excitement, the charm, the attraction is fake. It's not that it's fake per se, but there's no way of knowing that it's real. And if you look at what the news out there tries to tell us, what's the most important thing? The love in the beginning. 2 years later, if you don't have that love, go look for something new to find the greater love. In the halacha in Torah, that if you have a stream, which is a mikvah, kosher mikvah, but if it dries up once every 7 years, it's not kosher to be used as a mikvah, because something has to be attached to the ground, emes. To become tar, pure, you need something that's going to last, that's connected to truth. And you can only know such a thing when one is put into a situation where they don't have the luxuries, they don't have an easy life. A generation where they were so poor that to learn Torah of persecutions, and 6 people had to cover themselves with one garment just in order to learn Torah, and still they had a tremendous passion to Torah. Then you know that it's real. So that is what tishalal. Isha yiras Hashem, a woman who praises God, could be praised, because then you know that it's for real. It might exist in potential in the generation, that time when everything is good, but it hasn't, you don't know for sure that it's there. So that's why it's called sheker, it's false. It's not praiseworthy yet. We said this in the Gemara Sanhedrin, Hevel hayoy. Beauty is vain, goes referring to the generation of Joshua. They entered the Holy Land of Israel, and they were transitioning towards settlement of in Eretz Yisrael. It was no longer a miraculous type of life. The open relationship that the generation which left Egypt had with Hashem was no longer a reality. In the desert, they received man, food from heaven, bread from heaven. The water they received miraculously coming from the ground at any taste that you wanted. Every night there was love. There was quail birds coming to the camp every night for them to catch if they wanted to eat it. They never had to go to the cleaners, laundromat. Their clothes were always clean. They had clouds surrounding them, pillars of fires. Their clothes grew with them. There was an open relationship with Hashem. Hashem, you could say, was, so to speak, excited about us. We were excited about Hashem. They came into the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael. Now they got to go to work. Honeymoon over. There's no mun, no clouds of glory, no dry, clean clothes, no water from a miraculous traveling spring. So no longer you had that chen, that charm, that attraction. Rather, you had yoifi, beauty. That was generation of Yeshua. They didn't have all the perks that came in the beginning. Rather, it says during the times of Yeshua, the Jewish people did not sin. They did not serve idols. So they saw that the relationship they had with Hashem, although it was no longer in a way of chen, you could say the original attraction and the charm. However, they still had a connection to Hashem. And not just that, they never sinned. They thought about, look, we have Yeshua, we have the elders, we have the miracles that brought us into the land of Israel. And they saw clearly, if you listen to Hashem, you got tremendous miracles. You learned Torah, you listened to Hashem. The walls of Yericho collapsed, fell down, or sunk in the ground, rather. And true, it was done through the holy Aron, the Ark. And however, it took 7 years of wars to conquer the land of Eretz Yisrael. So even during the time of Yeshua, where there's no longer the chen, which is attraction, but there was still idea of yoifi. Yoifi means beauty. The relationship with Hashem, they could explain. They saw that if you listen to Hashem, good things happened. And when you didn't, God forbid, different things happened. With Achan, they saw Hashem's presence, and miracles would happen if they listened to Hashem. So it was logical, it made sense, do what Hashem wants. If you do the right thing, life will be good. Now, there's another type of learning Torah, which is not called chen or yoifi. Not charm, which is unbridled excitement and passion. Not yoifi, which is makes sense, we should learn Torah. But rather, it's called Yiras Hashem, fear of God. Of course, as we learn Chassidus, and we learn Tanya in the very beginnings, Yira doesn't mean fear, literally just of being scared. Like Mordechai, Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, before becoming a Chassid, he would walk over to the bima where the Chazan would stand, and he would look at the word Shivisi Hashem Lenagdi Summit. Hashem is in front of me. Imagine a big ox coming to and attacking him, and how scared he would be, and thinking I have to be scared of Hashem. It's not Yira, scared of getting punished. There's Yiras. There's a lower Yira that once one progresses, a fear of being separated from Hashem. I don't want to be separated. Then there's a fear to Hashem is my life. I don't want to die. Then there's a fear. I don't want to disappoint Hashem. My father, I don't want to disappoint him. Hashem, of course, I'm going to do something that's going to make Hashem unhappy. Yira applies even if there's no chen, there's no attraction, there's no yoifi, there's no logical reason for it. Rather, it's Yiras Hashem, fear of God, which goes beyond that. And that was in the generation of Yehuda Bar Ilai, where there was tremendous persecution, tremendous poverty. 6 students had to wrap themselves in one garment. This is right after the rebellion of Bar Kokhba. Bar Kokhba fought against the Romans, and there was tremendously harsh decrees against the Jewish people in the Holy Land, And so we call it Gzeres Hashmad, as we learned yesterday about Rebbe Lazar ben Shamua wanted to leave Eretz Yisrael and go to Bavel at that time. In the end, he stayed. He was eventually himself, although he lived a long life and he was killed by the Romans. And he wasn't Hitler, God, or all of our enemies, all over whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, Ashraf, or whoever they are. They weren't the first ones to try solving the Jewish problem. And Adriana's case, or Adrian, tried doing the same thing. And he made decrees about Bris Milah, about you're not allowed to give smicha, appoint Jewish leaders, you're not allowed to keep Shabbos. In the area of Yerushalayim, he built a city full of idols, called it Alia Capitolania. He built for the pagan god, false god Jupiter. He built on the Beis Hamikdash, on the Temple Mount. He built a temple for that. And that's what caused the Jewish rebellion in the first place. Whoever didn't listen was tortured, was killed. It's time of tremendous, tremendous persecution. We know about the 10 martyrs. 10, we learned yesterday about the Elazar ben Shemua. He was a Kohen. So some say he was corresponding to the Shevet Levi, some say corresponding to the Shevet Shimon. The 10 martyrs who were killed. The stories are told about Rabbi Shmuel and Shimon Gamliel, the ones who were killed for teaching Torah, or who was a Kohen Gadol, high priest in the Beis Hamikdash, who would say Hashem's name. Rabbi Nassan Omer says, Hashem says, it's the middle of the 10 Commandments, I will do kindness for those who love me and to those who keep my commandments. These are referring to the Jews, which devoted themselves to live in the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael, and they devote their lives to fulfill the mitzvahs. How would they devote their lives? They would say, why are you being killed for? Shemalti es b'ni. They were being led to death because they gave a bris milah to their son. Why are you being led to be burned? Because he was teaching Torah. Why are you being crucified? Ate matzah. Why are you being lashed 100 times? Because I shook the lulav and esrog. And it's not something that's only in ancient history, but till today. And you can unfortunately see many pictures of it. If you just look at a little bit what happened 75 years ago, etc. Says in Zechariah, if somebody asks, what are all the sores that a person has in their back, and he's going to reply, these are the beatings that I received in order to become beloved to my Father in heaven. The Rashbatz, the teacher of the Friedrich Rebbe, one of the greatest Chassidim from times of Tzemach Tzedek and onwards. When he became a Chassid, he was one of the top students of Hershel, the Rebbe Slutzk, and he was beaten when he became a Chassid. It was very difficult. And they would say, but the bruises that he got from there were the most precious things that he had on his body. He says, are you a chassid? He says, look at my body. Look at what I'm suffering, what I suffered in order to become a chassid. So when the Rebbe said the Sikha, it was in the year 1972. It was a very tremendous time then. There was many chassidim were finally able to leave the USSR, the Soviet Union. And we do know that in 1946-47, that was when the major exodus of Chassidim who managed to leave and escape Russia was in 1946-47, with a tremendous miracles from Hashem. And that's when you could say the Friedrich Rebbe came to America 10 years before that. But the influx of Chassidim, which from there, the Friedrich Rebbe and the Rebbe wouldn't let them come to America, but rather sent them all over the world. to Australia, to Eretz Yisrael, to France, to wherever there were Jewish people, South America. He says, don't come to New York. I'm not looking for a Chassidim over here. Hashem took you out of Russia and saved you for a mission to all over, to make Yiddishkeit all over. But then the Iron Curtain closed, and Stalin was still living. And then in 1972, that's when suddenly several 100,000 Russian Jews were allowed to leave Russia, including many Chassidim were finally able to leave the USSR. And the Jewish world, was shocked to see that you have Jews leaving Russia, talking about more than 50 years after the revolution. There hasn't been a legal cheder in Russia for who knows how long. And Jews, fully observant Jews, with beards, with yarmulkes, Torah scholars, and they're leaving a country where if you missed a day of public school, the parents would be sent to Siberia, the children sent to an orphanage. If you gave your child a bris, any child a bris, would be shot by a firing squad. And Jews, Yiddishkeit, Chassidim, especially Schneersonists specifically, were persecuted with an iron fist. And they're coming out of Russia here in 1972, and you see that they were able to come out as Chassidim and would fit right into any place they came. And when the Rebbe spoke this particular talk, which we're learning right now, many of these Chassidim who just left Russia were present there, and there was a tremendous excitement. All they wanted their entire lives was to see the Rebbe, and finally they're getting to see the Rebbe for the first time. And so the Rebbe spoke about the idea of persecution, Mesiras Nefesh, and that's how you see something is real. And the Rebbe compared this generation of those who left Russia in the 70s and still were staunch Yidden, Chassidim, to the generation of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, called the Dera Shma, the generation of persecution. It was interesting. The Rebbe paid personally for many of them to come in for Tishrei of that year, and the Rebbe gave them tremendous favoritism, you could say. One of them, the Rebbe stopped having fabringins on Sukkos in the Sukkah because the Sukkah was too small, was very packed. People got hurt. And then one Chassid, Moshe Nisolevich, when he's in Chassidus by the Rebbe, he asked the Rebbe before Sukkos, which even then it was very unique. So he asked the Rebbe, made Shachiyanu, for seeing the Rebbe the first time, and he asked the Rebbe, will there be a Maimer on Sukkos? And the Rebbe says, we stopped saying a Maimer on Sukkos because we stopped for bringing on Sukkos because it's a sakana, it's a danger. He tells the Rebbe, how could we have a Sukkos without a Maimer? So the Rebbe came in to the shul on the first and second day of Sukkos that year, 71, 72, and said, so it was Lamed Gimmel. But the Rebbe said a Maimer 8 o'clock in the morning, from 8 till 9, and the Rebbe left, or 8 to 9:30, and came back down to shul 10 o'clock. Tremendous Maimer, Aluas Hashem Kol Goyim. When it came to Tkiyah Shofar, the Rebbe said they should all stand in his place on his bima with him. And the Rebbe sent them to go visit certain G'dolei Yisrael, great Torah scholars. One of them, one person the Rebbe told him to go visit was Moshe Feinstein. Of course, I'm saying it doesn't need much introduction. But Moshe Feinstein, the Rebbe actually sent an introduction to everyone who was sent. So, for example, to Lippe Klein, still around, living in Nachas Chabad, the Rebbe said he should say that he's for example, Rebbe Kozliner, Rebbe Yisachar, Rebbe Matal Kozliner, and the Rebbe said his introduction was that he's Baki, he is fluent in the 4 parts of Shulchan Aruch. And Moshe Feinstein spoke with him in learning, and he was impressed how much he knew in learning, having never gone to a regular yeshiva. And he said, Lippe Klein said he's a Baki, he's fluent in the first four volumes of the Likutei Sichos. Volume 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Likutei Sichos of the Rebbe's talks are very unique, and they're written in a way to be said over sort of as a speech in a show, because just in order to get a Jewish sefer, a Jewish book in Russia was very difficult. And somehow he managed to get one copy of Chelik, first 4 volumes of the Likutei Sichos. And Lippert Klein really wanted to learn it, but there was only one copy available. So he went and he copied by hand, word for word, Chelik Alef through Dalet of the Likutei Sichos. And the Rebbe describes such a person. He was born in a certain country where his father was, his grandfather was. He have never seen any open Yiddishkeit on the street. A person with a beard was so rare. Tremendous persecution. Whatever it was, Shabbos, Yom Tov, kosher. They would not let people have their own houses. You couldn't have a kosher kitchen. Your kitchen at home was not kosher. He never saw anything to do with Yiddishkeit, which is not connected with persecution. There's no logical reason why I shouldn't just assimilate and become like everyone else around him. There's no natural end. He never saw a way out. Nobody left Russia. Not even a fly, they say. Nobody was able to leave. So there's no end in sight. It's not that another army is going to, in a war with us, might save us. There was no end in sight. There's never a situation where they might be saved. And it's over 50 years, already 55 years at that point. And it makes no logical sense whatsoever that one should keep Shabbos, Yom Tov. If you're saying in times of Yehuda Bar Ilai, there was only one talis for 6 people, in Russia was the same thing. Because it was also one talis for 6 people. A talis katan at Tzitzis was almost impossible to find. And still, just like in times of Yehuda Bar Ilai, they would learn Torah with all these hardships that they had. They also, they're coming from this country, from Russia, and also they learned Torah. You can ask me, what did he see in Torah? Did he have that passion and excitement of the generation? Did he have that chen, the attraction? Did you have the yofi? Any sense? Did it make any sense? Why did you learn Torah? Did you see any gain out of it? He says, I never witnessed anything good coming out of my learning of Torah in Russia. He goes out to the streets, and who does he see? Oyev misnakim, many enemies trying to get him. When he comes home, he needs to be careful what he says, because they would have listening devices in people's houses. They would put in neighbors that could listen through the walls. He can never speak normally. They would put informers by every place, and there's dozens or hundreds of stories about every one of these examples that we're saying. It's possible that he could be arrested, tortured, interrogated, sent away. And my father had at one point in the 1970s came out from Russia, Simcha Gorodetsky, and the sufferings he went through over decades in prison, it's indescribable. First sentence to death, but they tortured him. They put a light bulb under his chin that if he fall asleep or lower his chin, it would burn him. Tremendous sufferings. It says even about Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, who were thrown into a fiery furnace in times of Nebuchadnezzar, as we learned in Masechta Megillah, that famous day. Daniel, Mishael, Azariah, the Valley of the Dry Bones, all these things took place that day. It says that if they would have been tortured, they would have bowed to the idol. The Gemara knows what would have happened, and the Rebbe says these people who came out of Russia were in a situation where they were in Akduhu. They were being tortured, and not just once, for decades. Nebuchadnezzar was a king who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. He made a massive idol, which symbolized how he will be eternal, and he commanded everyone to bow to the statue. When the music played, and everyone bowed, but Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, 3 Jewish princes. And although they were sort of blended in the crowd, there were people who told Nebuchadnezzar about it, and he came and he saw for himself. And he told them, I'll give you another chance, bow down. And they refused. And he threw them into a fiery furnace. And the heat was so hot, it burned those who threw them in, but they survived. And it only burnt their bonds. So this is a staple in life about Mesiras Nefesh. Self-sacrifice. Now, the story of Hanani, Mishael, and Nazario is a one-time thing. They weren't beaten, they weren't flogged. The Gemara says they wouldn't have been able to withstand the pressure. And the Rebbe is just pointing out the immense Mesiras Nefesh that the Jews coming from behind the Iron Curtain were oppressed for decades, and they still stay devoted to Hashem. He didn't see lo chen, v'lo yofi, no charm, no beauty, no excitement, nothing logical about it. And it would happen, and it's happened many times over there, where they would arrest the parents, take the children, put them in an orphanage, and so they would anyways do whatever they wanted to the children, whether you liked it or not. And when they were taught, you had to make excuses. They're sneaking out of the house. The authorities would come. Are you going to school? And they had to learn. There wasn't standards, and there weren't school buildings or crossing guards. No teacher, no yeshiva, nothing. What type of Torah could they have already? And this is not called yofi, beauty, not called chen. You don't see anything good in it. He asked him, what are you doing it for? And what does he answer? Elikim ani yarei. I fear Hashem. As it says, Isha yiras Hashem itis halal. Rabbi Zaltzman, who's now a shliach in Toronto, he was born in Soviet Russia, and he was part of the community in Samarkand, was an active member of underground Jewish activities, and he was 15 years old in 1971. Finally, they received a permit to leave Russia and went to Eretz Yisrael, and he went to 770 for Tishrei. On Chol HaMoed, there was a sudden announcement that went out that the Rebbe wanted to see everyone who just came out of Russia. The Rebbe wanted to see them. So all of them gathered in front of the Rebbe's room. And the Rebbe let them in. The Rebbe was learning a sefer with his glasses on. And the Rebbe asked, is everyone here? And there were about 30 of them. So it took time for everyone to come. And afterwards, the Rebbe took off his glasses, closed the book, and he says, I want you to go see the Moshe Feinstein. And the Rebbe told them, I'm just going to say more details, tell her Moshe Feinstein the way that it was. Don't be humble about the way it was in Russia. I want him to know how Chassidim survived in Russia. Now, Moshe Feinstein himself left Russia in 1931. He was a Rav in the city of Luban. Now, Rabbi Zaltzman says, I came from Russia. I never in my life heard of Moshe Feinstein. I never heard of him. Although in America, he was so well known, everybody knew about him. He says, but we never heard about him. So the outside, they went straight from the Rebbe's room. There were cars waiting outside. One of them was a Rebbe's car, and they went straight to the Moshe Feinstein. He spoke with adults. Somebody told them about Rabbi Yankel Notik, Yankel Kerslaver, that he is a Baki B'Shas. He's fluent in entire Shas, which he was a tremendous Goin, tremendous Torah scholar. And Moshe Feinstein asked him, is it true that you know the whole Shas? Whole Gemara? He says, not all of it, just half. So he says, which half? So he asked him, ask me a question, whatever half you want. And Moshe Feinstein asked him a few questions and smiled. Then he moved to the young boys, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. What are you studying now? So he said, they're studying now Masechta Kiddushin, Perek HaOmer. And he started asking a few questions about the Mishnah. And they started answering him what the Tosfos said, and he started to cry. So Rabbi Zaltzman says, I had no idea. I never heard of Moshe Feinstein before. I'm assuming he's some big person, and he's crying. Did I insult him? Like, what happened? But then he realized that Moshe Feinstein was overcome with emotion. And Moshe Feinstein knew the persecution in Russia from the 30s. And he realized, we're talking about 40-something years later, and his students, they could be proud that they have him in his own yeshiva coming out from Russia. So he asked them, how did he do it? One person answered, because we got together from time to time, we had farbrengens, we had longing for the Rebbe, and then Rabbi Yankel Nutik answered, did we have any other choice? Or anything else we were able to do? We had no choice. In other words, being a Yid is not a choice. It's not like we have a choice. I choose to be Jewish, not to be Jewish. This is what it means. Isha Yiras Hashem Itasalo. A woman who fears God is praiseworthy. A woman who fears God is emes. It's true. It's not sheker. It's not false. It's not hevel. It's not deceptive. It's not vain. So say that sheker achein hevel yofi. False is vain and deceptive is charm and beauty, and true is a woman who fears God. Why do we say tishalal? A woman who fears God is praiseworthy. It's not the opposite. It's not the antonym. The antonym of false and vain is true. So a woman who fears God should say it's truth. Why is it saying Isha Yiras Hashem? He says, "Halal." A woman who fears God is praiseworthy. What does it mean, praiseworthy? Do I have to praise myself? Yeah, everyone give yourself a nice pat on the back. Praising is effective and appreciated if someone else gives you a praise. For example, how Yossi, how dedicated he is, and Rabbi Karp, how much he knows, etc. Dovi's great yichus, Mr. Nadich, even in Florida, is joining in, and Moshe, and who learned from Rabbi Posner, and Mike, who's works a whole life 16 hours a day, and now learns 16 hours a day. This is praiseworthy when someone else praises you. So even if a person makes a truthful, honest assumption and calculation, and it's true. I never learned in yeshiva. I never had friends. I never had that peer pressure to learn in yeshiva. I never had somebody on top of me pushing me, do this, do that. I don't know how to learn myself to in a loud voice. And if I learn out loud, in Russia, if they learned out loud, it could be a very big issue, because they had to whisper everything, because a neighbor would overhear, and if you informed someone else, you got rewarded, and they would take away his books and take away the teacher, and then send the teacher to who knows where. Everyone had to whisper their learning. It says, what greatness can my learning be? And we tell them, not just your learning is real. It says MS, it's real, but more than that, everyone else could praise you, could be jealous, could look up to the way you learn. Your learning did not only affect you, it affected everyone around you, that they have to recognize you. Look, these are the people. You're not expecting reward in this world, not expecting reward in the world to come, but you have a free moment where one could learn the Torah of Hashem. It's worth it to put yourself in danger, to put everything on the side, put all your goals away in order to learn as much as you can. And it affects him and it causes him, when those who don't have to put themselves in danger to learn Torah, and they see someone who does doing it, they also will have a love of Torah. And it affects them that they also want to learn Torah. It's a retroactive effect. The learning of Torah in the time of Moshe, Rabbeinu, Yeshua, King Chizkiah, were in a great level. They were a level of chen and yofi, charm and beauty. They were the greatest. But the ultimate test and the ultimate dedication to Torah is when there's no beauty and no charm and no excitement, and there's a lot of pressure and a lot of persecution, a lot of other things, and people will praise you, because that's Isha Yiras Hashem. Not looking at whatever else is going on, but your learning of Torah is even more praiseworthy than the Torah of the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua, and Chizkiah. Going back to the example of a couple who just got married. Everything's perfect at the beginning doesn't mean there's truly a deep connection. When hard times come and they still stay connected and supportive of each other, it shows that the whole marriage from the beginning was real. This is the same idea of Purim. Jews in the times of Purim accepted the Torah which began to do at Har Sinai. The Jews accepted it when Hashem gave them the Torah, but it was under the influence of intoxication. They were that's such a great revelation of light, of godliness. The connection was passionate, burning. But when Haman was oppressing the Jews, and if they would have just dropped the Torah, they would have been saved, and not a single Jew dropped the Torah, they stayed firm to their faith, that validated the acceptance of the first generation was actually real. And the Jews of the persecuted generations are the same thing. When the persecution is the highest, Jewish people validate the learning of a Torah of the times of Moshe and Yeshua. Their self-sacrifice testifies that Torah mitzvahs from the days of old were for real. So he says, "Hello, everyone, even the earlier generations, where Torah learning is great, is looking up to us, our generation. If we're the ones who are keeping Torah, if the world says different, there's Mesiras Nefesh of plenty as well. And if we're the ones who are keeping Torah, that validates the previous generations. That's why he says hello. It tells us that the holiness and the greatness of the past is actually a real holiness. It's not shek, it's not chen, it's not hevel. There was, it's 11:30. Just to conclude with a short anecdote. There was, I think his last name was Cellini. There was a Italian conductor of a orchestra. And he was supposed to go to New York and to conduct a symphony in, I think, the Lincoln Center. And he got sick, so he couldn't do it. And he sent someone else to do it instead of him. So he had someone who was writing a biography on his life. And this biographer called him up and says, "I feel so bad. For you, how do you feel?" So he says, I'm not going to be able to make it, but I'm going to listen to it on the radio. And on a shortwave radio, you're able to hear, from the broadcast that was on the radio. You're able to hear it. And he says, "I'll pick it up in Italy." So the biographer says, "Oh, really? Could I please come? I want to observe you as you're listening to your symphony being played." And he says, "I can't, I don't want you to come. It's going to be late at night, and I need to focus very strongly on what's happening. And so I'd rather you not come. Please, it's such an important milestone. I want to see it. And I promise you, I'll come. I won't disturb. I promise." Finally, he says, "Okay, if you come and you don't disturb me at all, then I'll let you just come and observe." And he did. He came about midnight to Cellini's house. He listens. He stands on the side. He doesn't interrupt him, and he hears a shortwave radio, with all the static and the grinding sounds coming out of the radio. And after the whole thing is over, he asks Cellini, "So what is your impressions of it?" He says, "It wasn't great. It was a waste of time. And besides, they were missing one cello over there, or one violin." And he was shocked. He's like, "What? How do you know that?" But he didn't answer him. He was tired. He went to bed. And so this biographer went and he made investigations, and he called up and he found out that one of the members of the orchestra of the symphony, which is over 100 people, 120 people, one of the violinists or the celloists, one of them was missing that day. And although the biographer listened and heard nothing wrong, the conductor was able, every single note for him was important. And if one note was missing, the whole thing was not good. The whole entire symphony, whole entire show was not good because one was missing. Hashem has a symphony playing. Some people have a loud part, some people have a low part. Every one of our brachas that we make, every word of Torah that we say is a symphony to Hashem. And if one note is missing, Hashem, the conductor, says, "What's wrong with my symphony today?" So every single one. And when we learn our Torah, we might not feel that, we're not going to be as great as a generation of the desert. We're not going to be as great as this great rabbi. I have all the cards stacked against me. But still, to the conductor, every single note is important. And for this, if even one is missing, it invalidates, you could say, everything else. So it's up to us to make even the previous generations praiseworthy. And with that,